Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon I bid to all. My name is RS Azira Sulaiman, hosting you live from Sabah Negeri di Bawah Bayu. Today's event is organized and brought to you by Community Muslim Universal, and on behalf of the organizer, I would like to welcome all of you to our public lecture and #Kebersamaan campaign booklet launch. For your information, today's event marks our final program for Kebersamaan campaign that has been happening for the past months. The goals of the campaign are to diversify a positive discourse on freedom of religion, belief and expression in Malaysia, and to disseminate progressive values such as respect, non-discrimination, and non-violence in a pluralistic Malaysian society. So to mark the end of our program Kebersamaan campaign, today we will launch our multilingual Kebersamaan digital booklet and take a listen to a public lecture on freedom of religion, belief and expression that will be delivered by Dato Madeline Berma and will be further discussed by Dr. Azmil Tayeb. And ladies and gentlemen, you can also watch our Kebersamaan campaign video that shows how racism and religious hatred can happen in Malaysia and ways to overcome these problems. So you can find the link on the Zoom chat. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Aizat Shamsuddin, the founder and project coordinator of KMU Malaysia, to give his opening remarks and launch of Kebersamaan booklet. Please welcome Aizat.
Thank you very much, Ares. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to our guest speakers, our participants. Thank you all for spending your time with us this afternoon, talking and thinking about very critical and also serious issues. So for the first part of our event today, Community Muslim Universal or KMU Malaysia would like to launch our Kebersamaan campaign booklet. Before we dive into the public lecture with our guest speakers today. So our booklet, our Kebersamaan booklet is drawn from our Kebersamaan campaign that has been taking place for the past months to diversify progressive discourse on freedom of religion, belief and expression in Malaysia, and also to promote positive values such as non-discrimination, non-violence and tolerance. But before that, let me tell you the reasons why we do this campaign. Post-2018 general election marked a democratic success for Malaysia that received praises and applause from the world community, pro-democracy alike, as it was our first time ever that we changed government. We have witnessed Pakatan Harapan's government trying to push for democratization through institutional reforms, including freer space for civil society to criticize, advocate for greater human rights that once regarded as a no-go zone. However, with greater freedom and political will from the government at the time were not enough to effect interracial and also interfaith integration. Perhaps too ambitious, so no strong strategies to brace for political and social backlashes based on ethno-religious sentiment. At the cost of doing that, we have witnessed increased visibility of racism and religious hatred that we have highlighted in our booklet. Hate speeches on online and physical spaces have culminated in the mobilization of thousands of people in public rallies such as anti-ICID or International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. We have also seen divisive responses based on racial and religious lines surrounding Zakir Naik and his controversial speeches, prolonged tension over the introduction of Jawi calligraphy in schools, to the extent of violent riot at Seafield Temple that has caused human casualties. This series of events have marked one of the darkest interracial and interfaith relations in Malaysian history, let alone the prosecution of religious and non-religious minorities in Malaysia, as well as human rights defenders and peace advocates enabled by discriminatory laws under the pretext of such as a threat to national harmony and an insult to the religion, which of course most of these laws violate human rights and need urgent legal reforms. Sure, some people said democracy is noisy. People are free to speak, protest, counter protest. But what does it mean if it's too noisy and we fail to implement good reforms to promote more meaningful pluralistic Malaysians? As we already know, most of it has to do with the politicization of race and religion. And sadly, it's not unique to Malaysia. But the politicization of race and religion can has a pervasive impact on our on other domains of our social lives. The narratives of us versus them, superiority of one race, religion, or sect over the other, often capitalized by the politicians, leaders, some followers to gain political legitimacy and obscure the general public from the realities of socio-economic inequality, poor governance, and education system. Dear guest speakers and fellow participants, when talking about freedom of religion and belief, it's not only about our rights to believe, but also our and others' rights to peacefully express their beliefs and thoughts, to treat others with respect and dignity, to deal with differences of opinions, thoughts with civility and discourse, not hate and violence. In that regard, I want to highlight two policy recommendations that we have gathered throughout our conversations with more than 100 stakeholders throughout our Kebersamaan campaign and also throughout our advocacy work. The first is about mainstreaming inclusive education that promotes 3I. What does it mean by 3I? Intercultural, interfaith, and intra-faith understanding and experience in our education system and society. Let me tell you why 3I's education is very close to our hearts at KMU Malaysia. KMU Malaysia was founded by former radicalized youth, including myself. This might be a bit of a shock to you all, but some of us were involved in radical political movements, even sympathetic towards the militant groups. Our life-changing experience has made us diagnose our own experience and realize that we had similar patterns. So among others, our homogeneous childhood and adult life and from high school to university, rigid and literal interpretation or understanding of the world, religion, and human beings. So in turn, we want to advocate for tolerance, empathy, humanity, and critical thinking within our society. We believe that there are people who like us, who are the products of our environment and also our education system. We have also stressed in our booklet that 3I's education are important, particularly to inculcate empathy that is extremely lacking in our society, I would say. In our advocacy work, if I may share some of our work here, we have conducted a lot of intercultural and interreligious dialogue with young people for them to grow their empathy towards each other. We allow and we facilitated a process of humanizing others through learning, to cultural learning, and also through understanding of their own problems and understanding of different types of discrimination of religious minorities, which they are facing on everyday basis. As a result of Kebersamaan campaign alone, KMU Malaysia has forged connections with University of Malaya and young people to create a module on interreligious and intercultural dialogue based on global citizenship framework and with Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia UKM on on operating counter narratives through storytelling to change hearts and minds. Second policy recommendation that we have stressed in our booklet is that we think that there is an urgency to mainstream a peaceful conflict resolution, as we have seen the rise of not only interracial and also interreligious tensions, but also sectarian divisions that have led to sectarian tribalism, excommunication of others, and justification of punishing others that may justify violence. Therefore, we view that peaceful conflict resolution is more important than ever in our society to mediate disputing parties without necessarily resorting to punitive measures by the authorities, as well as through hate and violence. The picture that you're looking at right now is one of our workshops that we conducted last year, whereby one of the important elements in our workshops, we emphasize on peaceful conflict resolution. We facilitated a role play with the young people who are have potentials, leadership potentials. We gave them a problem to solve. For example, a conflict between races and also between mazhab or sects. And what we have learned is that most of the young people do not think that it's an easy task to do to resolve a racial or religious tension. But what they understand, what they have learned is that it's possible to promote and to not isolate another part of society or religious minorities for the sake of the majority. But we will hear more on these policy recommendations when it comes to our public lecture later that will be delivered by Dato Dr. Madeline Berma and Dr. Azmil Tayeb to further foster freedom of religion and belief and expression. Before I end, I would like to thank hardworking and passionate people behind the implementation of Kebersamaan campaign. On behalf of KMU Malaysia, we would also like to thank the Dutch Embassy in Malaysia for supporting this project, as we have with us today, His Excellency Ad Jacobi with us to say a few words later. And lastly, before I end, I would like, we are very pleased to launch our Kebersamaan campaign booklet that is available in multiple language that you can see on the screen on your screen right now. It's available in English, Malay, Tamil, and Mandarin. That will be a guide to policymakers, civil society organizations, educators, media, and businesses to foster freedom of religion, belief, and expression in Malaysia. I think that's all from me. Let's have a listen to Mr. Ad Jacobi in our public lecture later. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Aizat, and my compliments for your relevant and passionate presentation. And welcome everyone to the closing event of this 7 months-long Kebersamaan campaign. The Embassy of the Netherlands is delighted that it had the opportunity to contribute to this outstanding project on freedom of religion, belief, and expression. Promoting and protecting human rights worldwide is a priority in the foreign policy of the Netherlands, and it is also reflected in our initiatives here in Malaysia. In total, there are 6 themes under the umbrella of human rights that the Netherlands has identified, and that includes the freedom of expression, religion, and belief, and equal rights for LGBTI persons. We are and we will continue to be committed to support activities that uphold the principles, values, and virtues of human rights. And I believe that I speak not only for the Netherlands, but also on behalf of most of my colleagues in the diplomatic community when I say these words. Then a few more words on freedom of religion and belief. It has been one of the priorities of the human rights policy of the Netherlands since 2007. The Netherlands promotes freedom of thought, conscience and religion of everyone, including the right not to believe and the right to change or leave one's religion or belief. Our objectives are to combat discrimination, violence and persecution on the grounds of religion or belief, not in the least because it is often targeted at vulnerable minorities. These activities are necessary because, unfortunately, there is a growing intolerance around the world when it comes to religion and belief. The Netherlands, nor Malaysia, is an exception, and as such, the discourse on tolerance is needed and must continue. Now, to keep this discourse going in Malaysia, the Netherlands Embassy believes it is very important to support initiatives like Kebersamaan. The KMU campaign contributed to a better understanding of the diverse religious practices and beliefs by touching on a wide array of topics related to freedom of religion, belief, and expression. Experts shared their thoughts and analysis throughout the program and stressed the importance of interfaith and interracial dialogues to foster peace and harmony in this country. We are aware that the current human rights climate in Malaysia is not ideal given the political instability and on top of that, the pandemic that we are all in. But there is hope when young people such as the ones at KMU relentlessly work on promoting a positive discussion, a positive narrative on religious freedom that counters hate, intolerance, and violence. They set a great example to many other youth out there to take part in this conversation in spite of the challenges that the environment at present poses. Now, before I conclude my welcome remarks, I would like to share with you this beautiful framed puzzle I received from KMU for their Kebersamaan campaign. I think you saw the image already behind Azira Salaiman. You will see the same as a back screen. Thank you very much for that. And now, with that having been said, I would like to pass the floor to Dato Dr. Madeline Berma, Fellow at Academy of Sciences Malaysia, ASM, and after that to Commissioner of the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia, SUHAKAM. And after that to Dr. Azmil Tayeb, Political Science Lecturer at the Universiti Sains Malaysia. I wish everybody a very pleasant lecture and discussion. I'll be listening with great interest, and I thank you for your time. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you very much, Aizat, for your insightful welcoming remarks. And also thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your kind words and support toward our program. And for those of you who want to access and download our Kebersamaan digital booklet, we have put the links on the chat box that will direct you to our website. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we are into the main event of the day. Our public lecture today is titled Freedom of Religion, Belief and Expression in Malaysia, Where Are We Headed? We are here to unpack issues surrounding freedom of religion, belief and expression in Malaysia in the context of the post-2018 general election. We would like to explore some of the recommendations to improve thereof. It will be delivered by our very own Dato, Dr. Madeline Berma, and will be further discussed by Dr. Azmil Tayeb. So I think both of our speakers today need no detailed introduction, but it's worth getting acquainted with some of their works. Thus, please allow me to briefly read their biographies. So our learned public lecturer, Dr. Madeline Berma, is currently a fellow at Academy of Sciences Malaysia and a commissioner of the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia, SUHAKAM, from 2019. The government of Malaysia has appointed her to 7 national level consultative committees, and among them are the National Unity and Consultative Committee, Committee to Promote Interreligious Harmony and Understanding, National Heritage Council, and Committee on Education Policy Review. On top of that, she served as the Deputy Chair Education Policy Review from October 2018 to May 2019. She was an associate professor at the Faculty of Economics and Management, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, UKM, until she retired in 2018. She served as the director, Tun Fatimah Hashim Women's Leadership Center, UKM, from 2011 to 2016. She received her Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Hull, England, Master of Arts from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Bachelor of Economics from UKM. Next, our learned discussant, Dr. Azmil Tayeb, is a political scientist who has done extensive research on Islamic politics and social movements, particularly in Indonesia and Malaysia. Previously, he was a Fulbright Fellow based at the Pesantren in South Kalimantan, Indonesia, and an Erasmus Mundus Fellow based at Humboldt University in Berlin, Germany. He was also a recipient of the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Graduate Assistantship and the Australian National University's Doctoral Research Scholarship. His book, Islamic Education in Indonesia and Malaysia, Shaping Minds, Saving Souls, was published by Routledge in 2018. The book won the Critics' Choice Award for Social Science at the 2019 International Convention of Asia Scholars in Leiden, Netherlands. He is also the secretary and EXCO member of Aliran, which is a long-time peace and social justice organization. So I think that's all for now about our speakers today. And before we start, I would like to remind our fellow participants on Zoom to put your microphone on mute.
Azmil, if that's okay, Dr. Madeline, we're going to give you a few minutes to sort the internet connection problem. So let's have Dr. Azmil, also part of our guest speakers, to start.
Okay. Start video. Okay.
Yes, sorry about that, Dr. Azmil. So go ahead.
No, it's fine, Aizat. I mean,
Yes.
it's one of the challenges of this pandemic time. I mean, I do online learning, online teaching, so this is very common. So yeah, so I guess we all should be used to it by now after 1 year of pandemic, right? Okay, so Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you, Aizat. Thank you to Community Muslim Universal for inviting me to this program. And then also thank you to His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, and the Dutch Embassy for funding this program. I think the Kebersamaan campaign cannot be more timely, I think, in my opinion, given the deep polarization that we are seeing in Malaysian society right now, right? So we can see how polarized Malaysians are, especially along ethnic and religious lines. We can see, issues that seem trivial, right? Issues that people kind of, that's been long time part of our daily lives, and suddenly, it becomes explosive, right? It's exploited and used to divide and provoke people, one group against the other, right? I mean, even issues like in Puncak Alam, right? The selling of the non-halal section. We all live, with that for all our lives in Malaysia, and then suddenly, now it becomes a huge issue, and things like that, right? So I think the Kebersamaan campaign is really timely, and it's very much needed right now, because we really need to do something to help narrow, this divide that we have, and like Isaac said, the three I's, right? So it's not just between ethnic groups and between religious groups, and also within the religious group itself, especially Islam, right? Because we know, especially in Islam, it's not monolithic, right? So there are different interpretations. But since we have orthodoxy here in Malaysia that tends to monopolize the way that Islam is interpreted and practiced, so we have this kind of intra-faith discrimination as well. So I think it's much needed, a campaign like Kebersamaan, and I hope that there will be other campaigns to follow. The KMU and the Kebersamaan campaign can get the ball rolling, so to speak, and get others to follow suit, right? I think the main objective right now, I think what we really need to do is just to instead of focusing on differences and being exclusive, we should all be focusing on common values. We should be focusing on efforts to develop empathy, which I think is severely lacking in Malaysia right now. To put yourself in other people's shoes. We live in a very segregated community, by ethnic, by religion as well. So there's the severe lack of understanding of those who are different than us. So which leads to misperception, prejudice, against others, right? Because of this ignorance. So I think any effort and such the one that is being carried out by KMU and this Kebersamaan campaign should first and foremost be focusing on empathy, on programs, activities, efforts to promote empathy and to promote dialogue, a genuine dialogue, right? So I mean, you can have dialogue, but if it's an exclusive type of dialogue, if it's a dialogue that alienates others, then it's not going to be a genuine kind of dialogue, right? So it has to be inclusive and has to come from the point of view that we are all in the same boat, from the same standing, so not from a position of superiority, for example, dictating others what they should and should not do. I don't think that's the kind of dialogue that we want. So I think this kind of effort, the Kebersamaan campaign, is really crucial in that way, to help to start this, this effort to roll back, this kind of the regression, that we see in our society right now, especially when it comes to ethnic and religious relations. So I think because actually for this program, I'm supposed to build up on what Dr. Madeline would be speaking about, especially the SUHAKAM report in 2019 that didn't get tabled in the parliament because of we had this abrupt change of government in early 2020. So the SUHAKAM, the human rights report, was shelved. So it's doubtful when it's going to see the light of the day again, if ever. So anyways, I mean, I cannot speak for the SUHAKAM report because I haven't seen the report, and I tried to actually Google the report before this program, but I couldn't find the document. So I think Dr. Madeline would be the best person to talk about the substance of the SUHAKAM report in 2019. But I can speak from my own experience, from my own, I guess, academic background, for what I've been focusing on in the past few years. Also in my capacity as an academic, and also my capacity as an activist, as well as RS mentioned in my introduction, I'm part of Aliran, which is a long time peace and social justice group that is based in Penang. And we have done efforts along the same line like Kebersamaan campaign, trying to foster interfaith dialogue, get different groups to talk to each other, to understand each other. So we have done this, on a smaller scale, so I can share some of the experience that we at Aliran have done as well. But first, let me go to my own academic research. As RS has mentioned as well during the in the introduction, I've done research on Islamic education. That was actually my PhD thesis at the Australian National University, which was later published as a book by Routledge in 2018. So it's comparing the Islamic education in Indonesia and Malaysia. So why do these two countries take a different approach when it comes to managing Islamic education? But let's just focus on Malaysia, for the sake of this program. In Malaysia, I think what is lacking, what we can see, especially for those of us who have been through the Malaysian education system, and we can see this overwhelming dominance of Islamic orthodoxy, right, in our education system. We can see there's only one way to interpret and to practice Islam. Diversity of opinions, diversity of interpretations are not allowed or frowned upon, right? So this is a kind of Islamic practice that we see and we experience in Malaysia, and this is what we can see in the Islamic education as well. So to me, it's what we really need at this moment is maybe to revamp the Islamic education itself. Every Muslim students, we have to take Islamic education subject, right? Islamic studies subject, pendidikan Islam, right? Pendidikan agama. I think the curriculum of the pendidikan agama can be revised, right, to reflect this kind of inclusiveness, this multicultural and multi-religious nature that we have in Malaysia. Instead of being heavily centered on the superiority of Islam over other religion, or just the dominance of the orthodox beliefs and practice that we have in Malaysia, it can instead promote the kind of diversity that we see in our society, right? I mean, first, what we can do is we can in the Islamic education, the curriculum itself can promote interfaith dialogue, right? It can incorporate a component that focuses on interfaith dialogue, and not interfaith dialogue the kind that we typically see in Malaysia, where you have some ustazah kind of denigrating other religion, the kind of like Zakir Naik type of quote unquote interfaith dialogue. So it's not the kind of dialogue that we want. We want a genuine interfaith dialogue that sincerely try to understand other faith. Try to have this kind of empathy, this deep understanding. So this is, I think, what we need in our the Islamic studies curriculum. That cannot be found right now. There's but I think this is also, it's going to take some time. So it's not something that that can be implemented overnight, because you also need to have the teachers who are capable of teaching this component, right? To teach interfaith dialogue in class, right? So you need to have. So it means it has to start from the teachers training college, for example. So this kind of, but I think this must be done, now. I think the curriculum needs to be seriously revised, and also another thing, when you're talking about schools, right? I mean, I've done quite an extensive research in schools, and I've been to many schools throughout Malaysia. Is that when it comes to interfaith dialogue or inter-ethnic dialogue and or relations, I mean, there's no clear directive from the Ministry of Education. that purposely, that specifically look at these issues and try to implement programs in schools that trying to foster interfaith and inter-ethnic understanding amongst the students and teachers. But so some schools actually are more proactive depending on their teachers and depending on their headmasters or principals, that actually take it upon themselves to organize, inter-ethnic and inter-religious activities. I'm actually quite surprised, because some schools that I've been to, and the teachers and the principal would tell me that yes, we organize trips, for students to go and visit a church or temple or mosque, or visit ethnic enclaves, Chinese neighborhoods or Indian neighborhoods or Malay neighborhoods, kampongs, so that they get exposed and they get to talk with the people there, and understand, their lives, people who are different than them. And also some schools actually invite speakers from outside to come and religious leaders or ethnic, leaders, to come and give talk in school and have some kind of, a dialogue and engagement with the students and teachers. But this is just, we're talking about specific schools, so these are, and it's more the exception rather than the rule, so it depends on the principal and the teachers who are more proactive, who take on this approach. But I think the ministry can do a much better job, in making this a policy directive, for example, to incorporate this in the extracurricular activities for students, right? So to expose them to differences. So I think which is, we can help to dispel this kind of ignorance. And finally, speaking from my experience, my capacity as part of Aliran, the Peace and Social Justice Organization. One program that we've done, at least until the pandemic hit, was we do this hand-in-hand program. So we work with IKRAM, so which is as most of you know, it's an Islamic organization in Malaysia. So in IKRAM in Penang, so we do this kind of interfaith and inter-ethnic program just for women. So no men are allowed, actually. So only for women. I'm not even involved in this program. So to have women from different, about 10 to 15, from different backgrounds, ethnic, religious backgrounds, even class background as well, to get together in a room, in a safe space, and to engage each other, to talk to each other, to share their hopes and to share, to find common values, to see that despite the differences you see on the surface, deep down inside, people do share, the same hopes, the same dreams, the same problems, dealing with their daily lives, so after all, they're not that much different, so, even though on the surface, you can be Chinese, Indians, Malays, Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, whatever, but when you scratch deeper, then you can see there are actually a lot more similarities. And so, but it can actually, be quite a difficult conversation, because it's not easy for people to, to speak, this, it makes them uncomfortable, right? Put you outside the comfort zone. But this is the function of the safe space, so that people can speak freely, trying to dispel the ignorance and prejudice they have of the others, others who are different. So this is what we've been doing in Aliran for the past few years until the pandemic hit. So I think this is, my point is that, instead of hoping that the government will do something, which is highly doubtful now, because in the kind of government that we have, I think we all can start, from the bottom, right? Yeah, can start in our own personal capacity. We can do it in our own circle, or we can do it with the organization that we're involved in. Start small, and hopefully it will snowball into a more bigger effort. We can do like something that KMU is doing right now. I hope like I mentioned before, like I hope other organizations can also follow suit. And then you can have it snowball into a much bigger movement, and then gain recognition. Getting the attention of the people up there, so that there is actually a groundswell, of movement here that wants to reform the way that the interreligious and inter ethnic relations are going on in Malaysia now. So I think this is what we should do. So just to sum up what I've said, the focus on education, I think we should be revamped. I think, because it hasn't been revamped for God knows how long. I think it's even pertinent now. More crucial for now for us to revamp our education system, especially the Islamic studies subject, and also the bottoms up approach. In our own personal capacity and also our own organizational capacity. So I think with that, maybe I can maybe hopefully Dr. Madeline is okay now, has sorted out her technical issues, and she can go on and talk about the report. Thank you so much, everyone, and I look forward to the Q&A session later.
All right, thank you, Dr. Azmil. We have got Dr. Madeline with us. Yes, via phone call. So it's not online link.
Oh my God.
So now,
I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly, Doctor.
Yeah, you can hear me, but I can't. I'm trying to work out the what do you call it? What do you call it? The PowerPoint.
Yes. So we will forward the PowerPoint to our participants. At the same time, you can refer. Yes, you cannot show your PowerPoint here, but
okay.
we can just listen to your audio.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. Oh my God. Okay. Thank you very much. So now I can't see you. Now we started off. My sincere apologies to everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my sincere apologies to everyone, because I really feel like I'm really lost in this this internet world. But today is really the worst thing. Now we started off by saying that yes, in Malaysia, what we had the federal constitution, the highest law in the country that protects religious freedom. However, we do find that there are elements or areas that are still subject to. Many of us are thinking that is it really protecting my religious rights? For example, I come from Sarawak, so there are areas that are still, like for example, in the context of my adat, is it being recognized? So these are some of the issues that I was really talking about when we started off. Now, another thing that I would like to highlight is the fact that in Malaysia, we have the national philosophy. We have the Rukun Negara. That is the pillar of our nation. There we have five pillars, or rather the Rukun Negara: believe in God, loyalty to king and country, supremacy of the constitution, the rule of law, mutual respect, and good and social behavior. So the national philosophy was very well designed. However, I think in the last 2 years, I was involved in a committee that we were trying to do a preamble on the Rukun Negara, and there was a lot of resistance towards the effort to kind of put a preamble to the Rukun Negara. And guess what was the resistance when we brought it out into the open? They were not happy with the first one. They said believe in God, and we were kind of puzzled. The team was kind of like, so what is wrong with believe in God? Then later we realized they said, we can't be using believe in God anymore. The word here is not God. They said, some of them argued it should be Allah. So they said, no way that we want to accept the Rukun Negara if we still use the word believe in God. So there is this new discussion, there is this new argument, although the majority of Malaysians still believe in these 5 pillars. So belief in God has become a question, something that is of an issue to some Malaysians in Malaysia. So that is one area that I would like to highlight. Okay. Now, if you look at the objectives of Rukun Negara, many of us only know the 5 pillars, that is the 5 pillars that I mentioned, but we forgot about the objectives. Now, the objective was very, very clear, that is to achieve a greater unity among the people of Malaysia. We were very, very, many of us, you know, I came from a generation, I was born in the 50s, so I came from a generation, I grew up and then I live among friends who are not people of my same ethnic group. But when I went to the university, especially in UKM, I was exposed to a very different world. Suddenly I was exposed to a world where people identify themselves by ethnicity. People identify themselves by the state they come from. So I remembered when we first came in, I was in my tutorial class. My lecturer was asking me. So there was this discussion. So he was asking me, okay, Madeline, Berma. So I put up my hand and he was asking me. And he was saying, he was kind of puzzled. He said, are you Chinese? I wasn't very sure. Why is there a need to ask that question? Are you Chinese? And I said, I am not. Then he said, are you Malay? And I said, I am not. And then the next thing he asked me, don't tell me you are Indian. And I said, I am not Indian. And it's okay. So where are you from? And I said, I am from Sarawak. And that's when he said, but this was in the early 80s. And you must understand how the dynamics was during that period. And that's when I start to realize that I am not the same like other Malaysians who are in my class, because in my class, they were either Chinese, Indian, or Malays. Because Sarawakians, not many of us were managed to be enrolled into the Faculty of Economics. Many of us were in Faculty of Social Science. So this idea of being different started, I think I managed to hear our speaker was saying that our education system, yes, I do agree that we need to start somewhere. I will join you all later on that. What are the kind of proposals? Now, the next thing that I would like to focus on, as I mentioned just now, talking about our Rukun Negara, we must revive the Rukun Negara. If we look at the Rukun Negara is what we call the Tiang Seri. It is the pillar of our nation. It is the national philosophy. The objective of the Rukun Negara is basically, is to maintain what we call, to achieve greater unity, to create a just society where inequality, where poverty is something of the past, as what if you look at, if we read what Professor Yunus was saying, he wanted to make poverty in the museum so that people remember, oh, what is poverty? We forgot about poverty. But now in Malaysia, I think that is really something different. Poverty is something that is already part and parcel of our life. Now with COVID, it is even becoming more prevalent. And what is even more prevalent during the COVID, we become a nation that is so polarized. So although people say that we are in the same boat, in my opinion, we are definitely not in the same boat. We are only what we call, we are in the same storm. We are in the same storm in the COVID. However, not many of us are in the same boat. Many of us are in the sampan. Some of us are in their, what you call the prahu. Some of us are just merely swimming. There are others, a small percentage of us may even have yachts to where they are, to enable them to swim the storm, to drive against the storm. And then the other part about Rukun Negara, I would like to remind this, is maintaining a democratic way of life. So democracy is not just about going for election. And democracy is not just about parliament. So many of us think that once we have an election, so that is a democracy. That is democracy at its best. Yes, it is democracy, but there are other elements, there are other parts, there are also social aspects of our way of life, the way I want to lead my life. I think this is a point of controversy later. I will share later some of the things that the kind of hate speeches that we do receive in the course of doing our work. So, and including one of this is the issue when we brought up issue of ICET, we brought up the issue of LGBTs about their rights. You know, we do have, personally, I do receive hate speeches or rather hate emails us. But these are things that is part and parcel of our way. So maintaining a democratic way of life. This is something is a part and parcel of what our national philosophy is all about. The fourth element, or rather the fourth objective, is to ensure a liberal attitude towards the rich and diverse cultural traditions. Malaysia is home to more than 40 ethnic groups. So it is not just CIMB. It is not just Chinese, Indian, Malay. B is not Bumiputra. Now, I always say it is including Bangladesh. That was just a joke. What I'm trying to say is that it is beyond CIMB. Even we, the Bumiputras, there are more than 40 sub-ethnic in Sarawak. In Sabah, also more than 30. So in Semenanjung, now with if you start breaking it down, I am sure if you start breaking it down, there will be more than 10. You know. So we must celebrate. We must accept these differences. So ensuring a liberal attitude. Now, becoming liberal, the word liberal has come to become a very negative connotation. The moment a person is seen to be different, a person of a certain religious community will say, oh, they're too liberal. The way she looks at things, she is a liberal person. So she must be, she is not a mainstream, or he is not a mainstream. Dia ni liberal, dia tidak patut disokong. Dia dah keluar agama. She is no longer this religion or that religion. So liberalism is suddenly becoming a taboo, or rather something that you become a person who is defined as a liberal is no longer defined as another. It is no longer a Malaysian. So, and then the last one of the objective is to build a progressive society. What is a progressive society? A society that is based on science and technology, a society that is based on, when we make statements, it must be made based on data, it must be based on facts, it's not just hearsay. So if we don't like people, or we don't believe in the way, or we don't agree to what they say, we agree to disagree. So we do not we don't disagree just for the sake, because we don't like the way she, the way she puts on her makeup, the way he carries himself, the way his political belief, because of his ethnicity, because of his color. So now a progressive society is a society where we learn to agree to disagree. So that for a start, and we not only embrace differences, but we celebrate the differences in the diversity in our society. And this is something that we must learn to do, to accept differences and to celebrate differences, and not treat a person who differs in terms of their thinking, who differs in terms of their religious views, religious beliefs, in terms of their the way they pronounce their political affiliation. So, or the colors that they wear, or some people say even the color of their skin. Okay, so we are very quick in pointing out at the administration, or rather to the West. We always say that, oh, inilah budaya Barat, kurang ajar. Or sorry, I have to use this kind of word. We start pinpointing fingers. For every time we point our finger to other people, we forget there are 3 other fingers, or in our case, we point, rather 4 fingers are pointing back at us. Always believe that, we always must remember that for every time that we do that, we always say that, look at the West, we start naming countries, we start naming people, saying that, look at them, they are unlike us. We Malaysians, we are so tolerant, we are so blah, blah, blah. But I still have my doubts, although a small percentage, but I am worried because there are trends that shows that we are moving towards a direction. If nothing is being done, or efforts are being made like what we are doing today, I think it will just, we are going down a very difficult route. Okay, the next thing that I would like to show to us is that, as much before I start discussing the other things, I would like to share a few moments. This is what I call, although we have disunity or unity or whatever it is, let me just highlight what we call some of the challenges that we face in terms of expressing, or rather in trying to achieve what we call freedom of religion, speech, or freedom of expression. These are some of the things that I highlight. Number 1 is unity in uniformity. Okay, do we want unity in uniformity versus unity in diversity. Unity in uniformity means everyone is to be alike. Every one of us have to be the same. It sounds like a very, even like going to school, we wear similar uniforms to be unified in the name of unity. So we want to be uniform. We think alike. We vote for the same party, political party. We agree to the same principles and blah, blah, blah. Or do we want to practice this principle, or what we call unity in diversity, which is celebrating diversity, diverse culture, diverse belief, diverse political thoughts, but for the good of the nation. So don't ever think that if people of different beliefs and we disagree over certain things, we start branding them as, politically we say, ini mesti komunis, ini mesti political party A, mesti political party B. We love to brand, branding. We're so good at branding. So the point number one, the challenge number one is that, do we want unity in uniformity, or do we want unity in diversity? Number two, I remember previously in our previous Prime Minister, Dato Sri Najib, he loved this, he used the term Satu Malaysia, one Malaysia versus Malaysia for Malaysians. So are we going for one Malaysia, which Dato Sri Najib was very much into it, or there are other politicians who says, maybe it's Malaysia for Malaysians. But then there are people who are saying, what about, Malaysians who are Malaysians? I know of Malaysians, but they do not have documentation. They are undocumented. There are so many of them in Sabah and Sarawak. They are Malaysians. I know who they are. But because of undocumentation and because of their statelessness, does it mean that they do not have rights to what we as other Malaysians, because we have identity cards, because we have our My Card. So these are issues that we must address in our efforts to find a united, in terms of our addressing the issue of freedom of speech, religion, and things like that. Number three, are we talking about assimilation here? Do we want everybody to be assimilated? So these are issues that social scientists have always been grappling with, like if you look at our Indonesians, if we look at our Indonesian Chinese, they even at one time during Suharto's rule, before the Reformasi, they were they have become put in inverted commas, Indonesians. They are no longer considered themselves as Chinese, although they are of Chinese origins. They no longer have Chinese names. Everything they do, of course, many Malaysians want to aspire to be like that. But when I talk to my Chinese friends in Indonesia, they said, well, of course, there is the other side to it. They said, we still want we want to still practice our values, our culture. But now they are allowed to do that. They don't really have to be, and in fact, I was so, my student from Indonesia even showed, or rather, she emailed me a video showing a Christian being sworn in to the Jokowi's, I think one of the top positions. So which is something very refreshing when you look at what is happening in Indonesia. So I think that may be something that we can learn from. And the other element, number four, so number one, unity in uniformity. Number two, Malaysia versus Malaysia for Malaysian. Number three, assimilation. The third thing that is another challenge for us is poverty and inequality, something that is really close to my heart because I've been doing my research all through my adult life as an academician, and even now many of this work. Because poverty and inequality, somehow or another, there is an embedded element to it. There is an embedded element of ethnicity to it. There is an embedded element to geographical location associated with it. So we know that the majority of the poor are the Bumi Putras. But I'm not saying that there are no non-Bumi Putras who are not poor. So this is a wrong misconception. There are poor Chinese, there are poor Indians, there are poor Ibans, there are poor Bidayu, there are poor Orang Ulu, there are poor Kedasan Dusun. And there are also rich Malays, rich Iban, rich Chinese, rich Indian. So we must look at this beyond color, beyond ethnicity. Only then can we address this problem. And then the third one is religious fundamentalism. Now, I am looking at quite a few of complaints coming in of late regarding religious fundamentalism, but this one I will touch a bit later. And the last one is rising expectation. So with globalization, we start looking at, on the social media, messages or even discussions on social media that sometimes are worrying, especially when you are an old person like me. They always say it's very easy, to differentiate. How do you know when you are old? You know you are old when you always blame the young. So you know that you are young if you start blaming the old. So now you know who you are. You start measuring. You know you are old if you always blame the young. And you know that you are young if you always blame the old. Okay, so those are the challenges. Now, let me just give us another view despite the challenges. I would like to highlight we do have our moments of unity. And I am so proud as a Malaysian. I am really, really proud of the fact that we do have our moments of unity. There are times when we are united, and this unity is something that we must celebrate because this unity brought us together regardless of ethnicity, regardless of religion, regardless of political background, affiliation, or blah, blah, blah. So number one is definitely the COVID. The COVID brought us together. Kita jaga kita was a relevant, it's a beautiful slogan. The only thing right now is that kita do not jaga kita because we are too busy trying to break all the rules, SOP, to the point that now the SOP has been extended, MCO has been extended. But nevertheless, the word kita jaga kita is very, very important. We do not need other people to look after us. When I say other people, I'm referring to, we don't need the state to be all the time looking after us. People like us, we must empower the community. So we look out for our neighbors, people like my neighbors. I live in Bandar Baru, where 99.99999% are Malay, and I assume they are Muslim. So I am the 0.001% who is a Iban. But I never have much problem. So I do have really, really good neighbors. In fact, one of my neighbors is here, Professor Amira. Thank you for being a good neighbor. Okay, that is for Sinar Harian. I saw a lot of this discussion on Rakyat Bantu Rakyat. So that is our moment of unity. We are united. Another moment of unity that I would like to refresh our memories is Unite for MH370. Malaysians came together when two of our planes was shot. One was shot down over the Eastern Europe that we managed to recover. But for MH370, until now, we know that we have yet to find the remains of this plane. So that is we are united in in our search for in our prayers for MH370. And then during the banjir, during the big flood of 2014, I was there 1 month after the flood when the water started subsiding down. I saw, oh my goodness, beyond my imagination, Malaysians, going all to the areas, all to the the respected areas, to the flooded areas to bring about the aid that was very much needed. So we were united there, and also we were united when Ranau, when many tourists were stranded on Ranau. There was an earthquake, the Sabah earthquake at 5.9 magnitude, and we saw the heroes of Sabah. Oh my goodness! Now I'm coughing. I have all this problem with me. Are you all still with me? I hope you are.
Yes, we are.
Okay. I can only communicate with you. Okay, another thing, of course, is sports. We were so happy when we saw our sportsmen and sportswomen, and recently Nicole David. All of us voted like nobody's business to make sure that she win the award. So Malaysians, yes, we cannot deny the fact that we are very united, and we can be united despite our religion. Now, to the last part of my presentation, for a few more minutes, I would like to highlight some of the things that are worrying. So where are we heading? Now, I would like to cite two reports that I was involved in. Number one is the what we call the one that was presented by a report that was every year. It is what we call the COMAS report, the Malaysian Racial Discrimination Report. They had it until as far back as 2015. You can download it. It is on the internet. So the last report, I was one of the discussants. So in that report, they highlighted. So you can read and you can it was documented about 7 areas of discrimination in Malaysia. So what they did in this report, they highlighted 7 areas of discrimination. Number 1, racial and religious politics. So in terms of racial and religious politics, it was reported about 40% that was reported in the in this report. It was due to racial and religious politics. And then the second one, based on this report, was other areas like they call it research and religious incitement. The other one was politics. This one was incitement. And then we have the third one was racism in education. And then the fourth one, racial in other sectors. And number 5, racism in social media among Malaysians. Oh, that one is really, really very prevalent. There are so many experts there. Number 6, racial issues raised in parliament. And number 7, xenophobic behavior. So these are all reported in the report. The only drawback about the report, which I highlighted, is that it only reported what they found in the media and also what they found through the social media and the mainstream media based in Peninsular Malaysia. I remember when I told them, I think this is one of the limitations of the report. They were telling me, oh, because in Sarawak and Sabah, they kata, there was not the problem is not really very prevalent. So I said, yeah, it is. I must admit that we are a bit better than our friends here in Peninsula, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. So I was really hoping that in the next year report that they will incorporate some of the incidences, if there is any, in Sabah and Sarawak. Okay, so that please refer to, because I will share with you this PowerPoint on mine. So I really hope that you can download the report and go through it. And it was very well written, which is good. So I recommend. The second thing the second report that I would like to share with you all is basically is the SUHAKAM report, because I am also a member of SUHAKAM. And as a member of SUHAKAM, we go through complaints monthly. So every month we will receive complaints, and most of the complaints are mostly either related to citizenship. In Sabah, it's very, very high. Many of them do not have citizenship. And I think recently many of you are made aware of the Palauh case, or the case where Ustaz Ebit Yu, he was, the word was converting. But if you ask me or many of the people who already know Sabah, many of them were already Muslims, yeah? So maybe it is a reconversion or re-reconversion. But let's not go into that. But what I'm trying to say is that the issue about statelessness is a big problem in Sabah and Sarawak, and that's where we find that many problems it relates to poverty, intergenerational poverty, it relates to xenophobia, it relates to a lot of things, and also discrimination in terms of their access to education. Okay, let me just continue. Okay, now, in fact, when you see on this PowerPoint, in fact, I have all these photos showing. So I have one here. There is a video, and not a video. There is a poster that I googled from the internet, and in fact, I always used to show on my PowerPoint presentation to my class. Is that there is a group here. They were bringing in a poster or a banner saying that was, I think, immediately after the case when they declared the issue of Allah in Sabah and Sarawak. Remember, there was a case where we were not allowed to use the istilah Allah in our Bible. So I think many of you, for those of you who may not be familiar with the case, please refer to it. I think it was in, I can't remember, was it 2014, 15? I know you can Google. So the banner said, Allah just for Muslims, fight, no fear. So, I mean, these are the kind of words. So the kind of posters, and the photo is showing them, the banner was they were carrying the banner. So it was by Perkasa Kota Setar. So this sometimes is it can be political, it can be ethnicity, but never mind. I'm just trying to show to you. And another thing that I would like to highlight here, there was I just highlighted. I had a fair share of my problem when I raised this issue about the vulnerable groups. The stateless and the most vulnerable group were do not have easy access to some of the bantuan for COVID. Many Malaysians were already receiving their aid and all the kind of bantuan for COVID. But because many of the stateless Sarawakans and Sabahan, because many of them are Sarawakans, many of them were Penang. They do not have identity cards and everything. But I do know that they are Sarawakans, but they do not have identity cards because of undocumentation. Many of them were they were missed out in the initial stage. So I brought this up, and SUHAKAM, I brought this issue up, and SUHAKAM was cited. So there was a lot of, I had a fair share from some of the politicians, the local politicians. They were not too happy by my statement. They were saying that I was trying to pick on them, and I was they were saying that this is being politicized. I was not politicizing this whole thing. I was just saying that there are people who do not have identity cards, or those who are stateless. They do not have the support needed. But I'm so glad that the state has already done the necessary to look out for them, to get the NGOs to forward some of the aids that have been denied in the first place. And then the next thing that I did bring up, that was just like two weeks ago, and this is based on a webinar that we conducted. So the title of my presentation here, SUHAKAM wants government to address religious status problems in Sarawak. Now, what is happening in Sarawak? This is something that I want to share with you, which is very, very important. Maybe many of us, especially Sarawakians, we do know that this is an issue. People of my generation, or my age, just give me a few minutes. Okay, people of my generation, I am already in my 60s. I'm not afraid or ashamed to admit that. Okay, people of my generation, in the old days, when we have our own identity cards, the light blue, the blue identity card, very soft. I really love that identity card. It looks so, I wish I should have kept it rather than surrendering it to the authorities at that time to make my new card and things like that. Now, in that old card, many of our indigenous communities have a bin and a binti on their name. For example, Madeline binti Berma, okay, for our Melanau. And in this case, the one that was brought to my attention was reported, or rather was brought, they were complained to us last month was, she is a Penang, she is a Penang, 62 or 60-something-year-old Penang. On her identity card, she has a name, and she has a binti. So there are 6 of them, 5 of her siblings. So the problem was when they started changing from the old identity card to the new card. On the new card, all her siblings, they changed it from her religious status from Islam, because of the binti on their name. They were automatically put as Islam or rather Muslim. I can't remember, because on my identity card I don't have it. I think it's Islam, or is it Muslim? Okay, so this lady, the 62-year lady, the Penang lady. So she and her relatives, the 5 other siblings, wanted to change the identity, the status of religion on their identity card. But somehow or another, the sibling managed to do it much earlier, so they managed to change it to Buddhism or Christianity. So their binti is no longer there, so their religious status either up to whatever that is. But this lady, the one who came to report of her status, she couldn't change her status. She continues to have something, her name, and binti something, and her religion is Islam. And she is already 60 years old. She is a practicing Buddhist, and her daughter was the one who brought this attention to us. And I knew for a fact that she is not the only one, because during our webinar, there were also other issues. But it is not just this issue. Of course, there are issues of conversion. But I'm not going to go into
Madeline?
that. Okay? Yes.
Yep, yep.
How many
So
more minutes?
yes, we're running out of time, but we love to
Okay.
hear you on the religious fundamentalism
Oh,
before you
okay. So
conclude.
religious. Okay. The last part. Okay. So I'm so sorry because I could not detect where you all your faces. Now, in terms of religious fundamentalism, okay. Number one, we are beginning to see that very clearly. It is openly now. It is done openly. As I mentioned to you, it is not mentioned to you. As I mentioned to many of us here on this webinar. We are beginning to see people are very freely in terms of addressing each other. We see on social media how people are making fun of the Prophet, the Holy Prophet, how people are making fun of Jesus, how people are making fun of the, besides making fun of the religious belief, they are also using terminologies, allow me to use terms like babi, things like that, knowing very well, and they are referring to specific ethnic groups, specific religious beliefs, and these are all prevalent in the media. So, frankly speaking, let me just try to highlight here. There are two things I would like to highlight. Number one, as much as we do have unity in diversity, we do respect some of the unity, the things that unite us. I am really concerned, especially now that I am in SUHAKAM. I do see complaints coming in. I've heard of words, as I told you, of religious issues not easily open to discussion, open discussion. We know about the case of Indira Gandhi, how until now her daughter is not being brought back to her. And so I think these are issues that all of us really need to discuss openly. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry for taking so much of your time. So sorry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Madeline. I hope you stay for Q&A. So we have a couple of questions by the audience. But to sum up, so Dr. Madeline has mentioned a lot about the intersectionality between of other areas with freedom of religion, belief, and expression. So, but the most important point, I think, is the point between the clashes between assimilation or integration there, because we've seen what model that suits Malaysia to unite Malaysian people. Because perhaps this question could be answered by either by Dr. Madeline or Dr. Azmil Tayeb, because we don't have that grand narrative like Indonesia, Bangsa Indonesia, or like we've seen assimilation in the French society where they force, to a certain extent, that's a type of assimilation rather than integration. So which model should we follow, follow and should be for Malaysia? And Dr. Madeline also mentioned about other issues that intersect with freedom of religion and belief, such as statelessness, especially poverty and equality, how, people, state authority and people who are more powerful, who have access to resources, have exploited, these people to, either to convert or to discriminate, so on and so forth. But also this has been mentioned also by Dr. Azmil, the exploitation itself by people in power, elite circle, and also Dr. Azmil has emphasized on the importance of inclusive education that we should have in Malaysia, and our readiness to do that. That includes interfaith or interreligious understanding, which is very much in need right now. So before, let's go through the questions, but I will allow questions by audio first, and then we'll go to the people who have asked questions on Zoom chat. So please kindly raise your hand. I've seen Siti Kasim. Any other people who like to ask questions, please raise your hands. We'll allow you to speak. Yes, Kak Siti, if you can unmute yourself and very briefly.
Yes, thank you very much, Aizat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Now the question of the forum is where are we heading with regards to the freedom of religion, expression, blah, blah. My answer is doomsday if we don't change now. Okay. I have been attending many of these talks all the time, but unfortunately, I don't seem to hear the real solution. How are we going to change the situation we are now? I'm sorry to say the suggestions given have been exercised by many NGOs, academics, and blah, blah, yeah. These recommendations have been tried for donkey years, but still no improvement. Instead, it's getting worse. Why? Okay. They have done interfaith talks. They have done forums, just like KMU is doing. All kinds of proposals or ideas being put forward to the powers that be. But why still our situation have not changed? And also, people seem to think that this freedom of religion or expression and the other one is only applies to other faiths beside Islam. I think other faiths, to be honest, have not much problem with regard practicing to their own faiths, yeah? The problem is within Islam itself. The Shia, the Ahmadiyyas, Malays like me, and converts who do not conform to the mainstream idea of Islam as said by these so-called holders of heaven's keys are the ones who have been persecuted and threatened, yeah? So I think, these are the real issues. The Malays themselves or the Shia and Ahmadiyya are the one in trouble, in real problem. Now, I agree with Dr. Azmil Tayeb, the syllabus in our Pendidikan Islam, not just Pendidikan Islam, in fact, all of the syllabus in school needs to be revamped entirely and absolutely. But this is not going to happen without political will, i.e. our politicians, our parliamentarians. They are the lawmakers, they are the policy makers. They are the only people that can change whatever we want to be done on the ground. So you can see the product of our brainwashing and indoctrination for the last 30 years in schools now. You can see that. This is why our country is at ease now. Okay, I just want to finalize a little bit more. I think this idea of bottom up cannot work anymore. It has to be top bottom. This is the solution. You see, we must demand for a separation of religion and state, give the power to manage religion back to the sultans as it was originally intended in our constitution. Federal government has no business managing religion. What we need is a leader who is a warrior, who will be courageous enough to make the changes. So when you next time go voting for your parliamentarians, please vote for people who have the same ideals as what we want this country to be. That's my comment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kak Siti. So if I may put Kak Siti's questions into perspective. Number one is perhaps both of our speakers could answer this. Perhaps there are a lot of already, interfaith or good works that have been put by civil society, but there's always a driving force, a louder driving force against that good practices. So how do you see that as a solution? And second one is, how about people, intra-faith minorities, including Ahmadiyya and Shia people? As we have done for KMU, we have done our work. We have engaged with Ahmadiyya people, and they have been persecuted because of their religious belief and practice, getting raided by religious authorities. So how do you see we integrate them when we're talking about integration? How do we integrate these people as well in our society? Yeah.
No, it's not integrating them. It's about leaving people alone to practice their own faith and belief. I don't believe that we should integrate, accepting the mainstream or what. No, it is about leaving, just mind your own business lah, in simple terms, yeah?
All right, okay. So let's hear from our panelists, speakers, Dr. Madeline or Dr. Azmil?
Dr. Azmil?
Okay.
Okay, you go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah? Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, Dr. Madeline, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Siti. I always respect my good friend Siti. She never means her words. I totally agree with her. You know, it's no longer. I mean, society have done a big part of it, like what she mentions. You know, we have done forum, we have done this, we have done that. Now, I was a member. Let me just share two things. One, on our part at SUHAKAM, we do make the furthest we can go was to address at the higher level. For example, I remember we have reports from the, you know, when the Shia and also the minorities that she mentioned herself, the Ahmadiyya, they were being harassed, like she says. Yeah, what SUHAKAM, as member of SUHAKAM, what we did was we brought these issues, we brought it up to the relevant authorities. Like, for example, we brought it up to the Minister of Religious Affairs and also to the attention of the religious authorities. But like what Siti was saying, you know, that there is so much that you can do, because what is important now is we need real major changes. You know, like when he said just now, give it back to the Sultan, you know, the rulers. So I think that is really so, because for example, like we brought in the issue of, you know, education. I was part of the 13 member who was asked to review the, what do you call it, Jawatankuasa Kajian Dasar under YB Masli. Now the report is just, we also don't know what happened to the report. And one of the things that we recommended was to re-look into the issue of religious education in the school. So these are things, I do agree with Siti. It has to be also, we must have the political will and to be daring enough. At the moment, it's just like, yeah, business as usual. Thank you.
Dr. Azmil?
Okay, yes, thank you, Siti, for your comments. Spirited as usual. Yes, I mean, I completely agree. You know, I mean, there has to be a top-down approach as well. So I'm not saying that, you know, it has to be from the bottoms up, you know, but of course we know and we can see there is lack of political will, as you mentioned. Right? Even during the 22 months of the Pakatan Harapan government, you know, we can see so many backtrackings, you know, with Dr. Mujahid, who's supposed to be, you know, this figure of interfaith dialogue, who even wrote a book, you know, about, you know, interfaith dialogue. And then when he actually in the position to do something and ended up, you know, as we know, nothing was done, you know, nothing got done. So there is a lack of political will, you know, at the very top level. And then I think that's, you know, something that we should definitely, you know, address. But, you know, how do you, you know, inject some spine, I guess, you know, into these people at the top, right? I think that's the question, right? I mean, as you say, yes, you know, we can punish them at the polls, right? I mean, so what happens then, you know? I mean, if let's say if you don't have, you know, suitable candidates, but, you know, who share the same ideals, especially the kind of electoral system that we have in Malaysia, you know, the winner takes all, the, you know, first past the post, you know, which only, you know, will be privileged to, you know, two political parties, you know, two candidates. So I think that there has to be a way for us, you know, to put the pressure, you know, to the people at the top. You know, I think that pressure can come from the groundswell at the bottom. You know, I mean, the more and more people, you know, I think the civil society, you know, everyone has to play a part. And then, you know, it's a multi-pronged approach, right? So I guess, you know, if you talk about top-down, I mean, we can look at Indonesia, for example, right? I mean, you can see what the Jokowi administration has done since he won the second term, right? I mean, he banned Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, and then more recently he banned the Front Pembela Islam, FPI, you know, using executive orders to ban. You know, I mean, his approach, what some people call repressive pluralism. I know it's an oxymoron, but is that the kind of approach that we want for Malaysia? I think it's something, you know, it's debatable, of course, you know. I mean, Jokowi, I mean, of course, I mean, it's a different political system in Indonesia, right? And also he's been able to do this because, you know, he has managed to put his people in all the strategic positions within the government, and he has absolute control of the parliament. You know, his coalition actually controls more than 70% of the parliament. You know, he managed to push, you know, this kind of reforms and especially the controversial banning of, these two, radical Islamic groups, because of, the kind of power that he has, and he's not accountable, to that kind of gives him that political will, so to speak, but what can we do in Malaysia? Especially when we don't have the kind of, the same political system, that's one way if you want to do the reform top down, right? So have this kind of repressive pluralism, but then you need to have the people at the top who actually believe in this kind of pluralism, who see that the kind of polarization that we see in our society right now is something that's really toxic, and really, we're heading down towards the road of, destruction. So it's something that has to be done, needs to be done, and is being done quite heavy-handedly, like we see in Indonesia. So is that what we want to do, or we want to do something that's more inclusive, democratic, and more grounds up, or multifaceted approach? So I think it's something that's definitely that we can discuss, and we can debate. So that's my take.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Azmi, Dr. Madeline. Next question we have from Cassandra Tomazios on the chat. In your opinion, how do we go about advancing unity and addressing these fundamental human rights issues, given that activists and NGOs spreading awareness often get suppressed in some form? So I think this is related to Siti Kasim's questions. So perhaps, Dr. Madeline, what for SUHAKAM, what are the protections that the human rights defenders can get, or are these people being protected really when they advocate for peace and human rights? And also for Dr. Azmi, maybe it's about academic freedom in university. Academics as well is facing restrictions to talk about pluralism or to promote this kind of progressive values. So perhaps either of you could respond.
Okay, let me just respond to the one that you were asking about what the role that SUHAKAM has played.
Yeah.
Okay. SUHAKAM has played a very active role. Just to highlight that we are in the A status now. In terms of the work that we are doing in terms of promoting and protecting human rights. So basically, like for example, defenders of human rights, many of them we are friends, or rather we are helping them out in terms of a lot of things that we are doing. Like for example, some of them were already being arrested, like during even during Bersih and things like that. So SUHAKAM has played that is within our that is permitted within the law that allows us to assist. So we have been doing that. So I think other than that, like any struggle, like any perjuangan, I think many of us here who are activists, we know that we cannot stop. So we have to continue doing what we should and we can do. We should not be finding just for the sake of only for a certain period of time, because the struggle has to go on. I've been doing my work on poverty like more than 30 years. So to me, continue doing what we are doing. Yeah.
Dr. Azmil?
Okay. Speaking from the academic freedom, from freedom of expression on campus, I think just from the USM experience, I think it's a bit more open than what we can find outside of the campus grounds, and especially I think USM also being in Penang on the periphery helps a lot as well. Kind of going under the radar, so to speak. So I've my own experience. I've given talks actually on campus, a university-wide talk on secularism, pluralism. Attended by at least more than 200 people in a huge auditorium, talking about the very same thing that I've just mentioned. I've just talked about in this forum. So having that kind of platform, and then there's no protest, no nothing, so, and then there's a good Q&A. There are people who don't agree, because it makes them uncomfortable, especially when we problematize, the concept of secularism, what it actually means, disabuse, the notion of secularism, because, as we know in Malaysia, there's a serious misunderstanding of what secularism or liberalism means. So I think at least for me personally, I have that avenue here on campus. And also, 2 years ago, I also did another university forum as well, talking about radicalism, Islamic radicalism, specifically extreme, radicalism. So that there is that space, I think, especially after 2018. So it opens up, so at least among students, people can. People do talk freely about this, and the topics that we've discussed today are every class that I teach, I try to incorporate this, to get the students to think, more critically, what it means to have, what does pluralism means, what does secularism means, diversity, inclusiveness, and all these things. So at least I'm doing my part, as an educator, to instill this, these kinds of, discussions and critical discussion amongst my students and also in the university. So I say that, at least on campus, that there is a space. I cannot say the same thing maybe for if UKM or UM, which is more central, and therefore I think it's more, directly under the scrutiny of the state. But in Penang, especially on the island, I think they were kind of spared from, especially being an opposition-controlled government here in Penang. I think that really helps as well. So that's the advantage.
Yep.
And also, I think I said just to touch. I forgot to mention before, one of the top-down approach that we can. I think to me the most problematic in Malaysia right now is the 121(1)(a) amendment in the Constitution. Maybe also Dr. Madeline can explain. I think this is what really, because a lot of the cases that we see in Malaysia right now, the forced conversion, the custody cases, and all these things, at the crux of it, is the 121(1)(a) amendment in the Constitution that basically says, any Islamic, affairs should be left to the Sharia court, and the civil court has no jurisdiction whatsoever, to look at, this quote-unquote Islamic cases, right? Which I think is highly problematic in Malaysia, because we can see our lives are intertwined, right? It's not like Muslims live in their own sphere, and then non-Muslims live in their own sphere. Our life intersect. People married across, ethnic, religious lines, and they're bound to be, this kind of conflict, this kind of tensions, right? So I think that's, if you really want to solve, at least, significantly address the problems that we have in Malaysia right now, I think there should be at least some political will to repeal 121(1)(a) in the Constitution. I think that will solve a lot of cases, like Lina Joy case or Indira Gandhi case, and so many other cases that we see, right? Even the one that Dr. Madeline gave as an example, the Penang lady who was mistakenly identified as Muslim on the IC. So I think that's one. I think that's if you have to choose all these different top-down approaches that we can do, I think that should be at the top of the list, right? So repealing the 121(1)(a) in the Constitution. Okay.
Yep. I believe some of society organizations also have tackled on this 121(1)(a). I think we have MCCA Sharia as well. But really, I'll allow more questions as we want to compensate the time that we have lost before. But I really appreciate your patience to wait. We're going to extend a few more minutes for Q&A. Please now allow Miss Nina to ask questions. Please make it brief and short.
Hello. Hi. Assalamualaikum. Okay. I agree with Siti Kasim. Okay. But I have tried change other people, but it doesn't happen. So I have started to change myself and my children. That is why I'm focusing on the education system since 2006, the serial reformasi networking. Secondly, I agree with Dr. Azmil Tayeb that winners take all, because I read the book How's the World Work by Noam Chomsky. It's actually, Siti Kasim, if you know the history, our history back when the British jajah kita, that is where started the divide and conquer. Okay, so the solution is back, top to the bottom is still on the education part. And the rukun negara, in my opinion, is no longer relevant. And how are we going to bring this to the parliament to get the two-third party, two-third voice to agree with this? Because since I agree with Siti Kasim that our politicians are these baby boomers, really disappointing to us. I don't think it would change. It's going to be doomed. So leave it as it is, wait until they die, or we have another solution to create a circle of unity, a strong one, to reform sekolah. Because I'm ex-DAP. I've been in DAP for 5 years and try to fight to change the education system. And it's still the same because they are pro on Taiwanese and pendidikan Cina, where they only create good people in business, context materialistic, instead of like Finland, I share in the group chat here, you can read through, instead of creativity. You know, they are right to copy. They copy so many people, not innovative. We do not want that kind of education. So I fight through Dr. Mazlan and also that Chinese Menteri Timbalan, but it was ignored. So I pissed off. After 5 years, I left, because to me, all politicians, any party are the same. They're only focused on what's given to them. What I mean is they are cronies. As long as they're a cartel, global cabai is more on globally. If you see, there is a big issue there. So to make it shorten, so how Dr. Madeline and Azmil, what can we do? Like Siti Kasim, we have done a lot forum and stuff, and still going on. What about people who free thinker? Because in our rukun negara, it's stated there, percaya kepada Tuhan. It doesn't mean that a free thinker is not a good citizen. For example, my children, I give them freedom to choose their religion, not to follow, because I came from a very extreme family background of religion. I used to join, I used to share this with Professor Madeline. I used to join Negeri Islam Indonesia, where they want to do this same thing, Sharia like Aceh. And then I used to join ARCAM. So I know all these tactics they're using, fear-based, to do what they required to do through all this academic. And the professional, most of them are being infected and indoctrinated program by them. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, too long.
Thank you, Ms. Nina. So any response from our speakers about the politics and also how to generate political will? Really, it's still about top-bottom issue. Perhaps very, very short. Dr. Madeline?
Okay, sorry. I still believe in education. Yeah, I totally believe in education, and not just the formal education, but also, you know, as my friend Nina was saying just now, you know, we also need to educate ourselves, empower the community. There is a lot more to be learned, because I think our education system have failed us. Even at the school level, even at the university level, although I'm so glad to hear from Dr. Tadi, he said that in USM there were a bit more freedom. I'm not too sure about that in other universities, because I do know that students, if you are not from that particular political party at one time, they will be denied of certain of their student rights. So I think there is a lot more needs to be done, but I think now it is more open, as he has rightly mentioned. But in the past, it has always been dominated, because technically, the university is under a Menteri. Yeah? A Menteri means what? It is the ruling political party. Thank you.
Yep. And also, Dr. Azmil, if you could also respond to these related questions by Fidaus from MCCHR, how can we effectively engage with the decision makers in the education sectors to revamp our education?
Okay. Yes. I've actually tried a few times because I've met people from the ministry, at various conferences. So we've had discussions, but there's no follow up. There's just no, because these are all technocrats. The ones who typically attend these conferences. I mean, they're upper management, you know, they're kind of high up, you know, but they're not the rigid top-down approach that we have in Malaysia means that, you know, there's only one person at the top that gets to the say so, you know, that gets to dictate, you know, how everything is done, you know, which means the menteri, you know. So that's the problem that we have in Malaysia. You know, if you don't have direct access to the menteri and have the ears of the menteri, and then to, you know, to get the menteri to do something, you know, even if, you know, you get to the people maybe several rungs below the menteri, I mean, it's still, at least from my experience, it's still very difficult, you know, to get things done.
Yeah.
So so that has been my experience. So I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, because it's not, you know, I mean, they're not really open to engagement with civil society, or when they open up, you know, I mean, it's mostly just to get to have the civil society to rubber stamp the policies that's already been made, right? So they say that, okay, you know, at least we're you know, we engage, you know, with the people, you know, with the civil society. So it's not just, you know, something that they've done on their own. So that's usually the problem.
Yeah.
So so I don't know how, you know, unless if the menteri is your, you know, your father-in-law or something like that, then
Yeah.
then you can do that during Raya gathering, or you can say that, you know.
Yeah. So basically, there are works done, but really there's no action taken to make it into effect. Yes, Dr. Madeline?
I would suggest that we don't have a Kementerian Pendidikan at all. We just put it under Majlis Raja-Raja. No more Kementerian Pendidikan. Sama juga dengan Menteri Agama tadi. Because these are really, really issues that it will always be politicized. You put whoever is going to be there because it sells. Religion sells, ethnicity sells, and education sells. As you know, nobody dares to even say we want to talk about one education system. So if you ask me, you know, this is the other side of Madeline. So I would say just put it under our Majlis Raja-Raja, and only then we know that it will not be something that will be politicized, because we have the wisdom of our. Oh, that is my 2 cents worth.
Yes. So we've come to the last questions. I will allow Yuan Mei and also Mansurni to ask questions by audio, really quick, so we can conclude. Yes, Yuan Mei, you go first.
Thank you, Aizat. And my questions particularly, I would like to invite Dr. Tayeb, Azmil Tayeb, and also Siti Kasim. Perhaps you can help to give me some insights. I understand people here are trying to give solutions to overcome the situation in Malaysia, but sometimes I think too eager to run to get solution, we forgot, do we understand what kind of problem we are having right now? So if I look at freedom of religion and thoughts is a problem in Malaysia, so what kind of problem? Here I have a question, I hope to get insights from you. My question is about privatization in the Islamic agencies in Malaysia. And this is related, how do we tackle this issue within the legal framework of federal constitution? So I give you the context. The context was recently, I visited Tasik Chini, the Jakun community. Jakun community, Jakun indigenous people. So by constitution, they supposed to have Bumiputra status. Unfortunately, when I arrived there, their livelihood is really under threat. All the forests are gone. All the forests are gone, and they're replaced by felda. And the Ketua Keluarga informed me that the last pocket of the forest was taken away by whom, do you know? MUIM. MUIP, Majlis Agama Islam dan Adat Reza Melayu Pahang. So, when they have rural development for the poor, for Bumiputra, they were not included. So Malay in Pahang are all recruited to this Tasik Chini Felda settlement, each of them given 10 hectares of land and a house. And now they are getting managed by Felda, and they get a few thousands a month as income without working, just giving the land to be managed. And then Muib went in 10 hectares of land, 2008, the last pocket of the forest. It's an Islamic agency. So I would like to know from a practicing lawyer, Siti Kasim, and also Dr. Tayeb, how do we understand the situation of radical Islamization in Malaysia, especially using the state, using the government? So how can privatization be allowed under the federal constitution?
Yep.
And so that's why I'm sorry I cannot agree with Dr. Madeline to give it to the Raja, yeah, because I have seen in my naked eye. So when we discuss about this issue of freedom of religion, we are not talking about principle. There are people who are being victimized in this process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope we got it. While now I'll allow Mansurni for the last questions.
Tes, bisa saya tanya dalam Melayu je tak? Can
Yeah,
I use
yes.
Melayu? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Ya, sebelumnya saya Mansurni, saya daripada Indonesia. Kalau kita bicara kebebasan beragama kan sebetulnya di Malaysia dan Indonesia ini ya seperti tadi dijelaskan Dr. Azmil yang dia juga penelitian di Indonesia memang sangat berbeza kan, terutama mungkin dalam konteks, saya coba lihat dalam konteks orang mudanya. Nah di Indonesia itu kan banyak gerakan yang mengarahkan ke arah moderasi agama macam NU dan Muhammadiyah. Because I'm part of the Muhammadiyah, jadi kita kebetulan juga selalu diarahkan untuk berpikir moderat, menerima keberagaman dan lain-lain. Tapi yang saya nak tanyakan itu di Malaysia ini ada tak kelompok-kelompok Islam itu dia mengarahkan tak pemikiran minda masyarakat tuh macam seperti untuk mengawal ke arah moderat macam di Indonesia. Di Indonesia kan kita ada Nahdlatul Ulama dan juga Muhammadiyah. Jadi apa-apa pahaman yang masuk ke yang ini ke itu civil society itu di Indonesia, terutama civil society yang Islam, mereka itu sangat efektif untuk dia mengcounter agar supaya tak terjadi macam di Suriah, tak terjadi macam di Arab. Ya meskipun memang gerakan fundamentalisme itu sangat kuat sekarang di Indonesia, tapi selalu aja ada counter itu sangat kencang di Indonesia. Tapi memang yang saya tengok di Malaysia ini, tapi tak tahulah, tamen yang ini yang saya rasakan lah, untuk mengcounter gerakan fundamentalisme di kalangan anak muda itu tak sekuat, atau civil society-nya tak sekuat macam di Indonesia. Saya pun tak tahu kenapa tuh. Maksudnya berlaku tak macam itu juga, atau proses ke arah sana, di mana civil society yang Islamnya itu sangat berkontribusi untuk mengawal pemikiran moderat, macam di Indonesia, macam yang dilakukan Muhammadiyah dan Nahdlatul Ulama. Terima kasih sebelumnya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Narimah here. Can I respond? Can I add on to what our Indonesian friend has just said?
Yes, Dato. Can you make it short? So.
Ya, yes. Bukan. Pak Mansurni ya, Pak Mansurni Abadi. Bagi saya yang paling saya kagumkan dan juga saya sangat iri hati dengan Indonesia ialah orang Indonesia membedakan budaya dengan agama. Mereka enggak lupa satu ketika dulu mereka Buddhis, mereka Hindu. Jadi kita pergi ke Prabanan semua itu. Jadi that is the beauty of the Indonesian people. They differentiate culture and religion and the state as well. Whereas here we have failed to do that.
All right. Thank you for the comments and questions. Let's hear response from our speakers. Dr. Madeline or Dr. Azmil, would you like to respond to the first question and second?
Okay, regarding, I thank you very much. Just now, Yuan, whatever her name is, sorry, yeah. You were talking about your visit to Tasik Chini. Tasik Chini is one of my research areas, so I know the situation there, and I also know the role of, like you were saying, you know, the role of the state, because UKM, we even have a 20 over million worth of complex there, you know, to supposedly to assist the community there. There were a lot of scientists there. Yes, we also at the university, we have failed in our role to play our role in terms of assisting the community. So in that sense, I do share your concern. That's number one. Number two, coming back to the role of the rulers, I was merely talking about, I really feel that there are some areas that we should not allow the politicians anymore. You know, at the end of the day, I do not know who else should I go to. I was only thinking, because we do have the what we call RIC, the Royal Commission, which are supposed to be indifferent, which are supposed to be independent body. So I do look up to the rulers for independence. But even if we cannot trust the rulers, I don't have anybody else left. Okay, that's number two. Now, number three, in regards to Indonesians, I have a deep respect for my Indonesian friends. I have a lot of students from Indonesia. Yes, I do agree with Dr. Narima. They know how to differentiate between the state and religion and state. But if you talk to my Islamic friends here, there is no such separation between state and religion. That is a Christian way of looking at things. Give to, this is what, if you look at in the Christian faith, give to God what belongs to God and give to mankind what belongs to mankind. So there's a big separation of state and religion in the Christian religion. But according to my Muslim friends, in Islam, you cannot do that. So that is just my way of responding to that. So thank you very much for inviting me to share my thoughts. Thank you very much, Aizat.
Yes, Dr. Azmil.
Okay. So just to quickly maybe try to address the UNMA's question. I think the problem, especially in Pahang or United States, is because the management of land, it falls under the state jurisdiction, right? So that means you have the Majlis Agama Islam Pahang, and you have the Sultan's family and the state government, having a full monopoly on how the land within the state is managed, sold and used, and so that's why you have all these cases, right? So I think that's the problem that we should look at as well. But I think when it comes to education, I think Malaysia is highly centralized. I think maybe we should seriously consider to decentralize the education in Malaysia. Maybe it's worth the experiment. And we can see in Indonesia, for example, because education is part of the decentralization. It falls under the responsibility of the province and the sub-provincial governments to manage and administer education. And then they include muatan lokal, for example, local content that includes the specific local culture. Like I've done research in East Indonesia, in Nusa Tenggara Timur. I spent quite some time there. It's very tolerant. It's known for its tolerance, like inter-religious, inter-ethnic relations, and that's actually included in the curriculum. Because of the decentralization. I think maybe it's something that we should consider in Malaysia case as well. Because right now it's completely is highly centralized. So if you decentralize, they might have we might have some diversity. And also speaking of Indonesia as well, I completely agree. With the Indonesia, I think that there's a big difference between Indonesia and Malaysia, because we don't have similar organizations like Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah in Malaysia. I think these two organizations, Nahdlatul Ulama claims to have 60 million members, and Muhammadiyah is always 10 million members less, for 50 million. Who knows? But these are huge organizations with deep roots in Indonesian society, Indonesian history. They've been around, long before independence. Nahdlatul Ulama is celebrating 95th year, birthday this year, right? So and Muhammadiyah has been around more than 100 years. So we don't have similar. There's this moderating force, in the society that moderate religious discourse that similar to what's happening in Indonesia. So in Malaysia we have groups maybe like KMU, maybe like Islamic Renaissance Front, maybe like Sisters in Islam, but they have, as we all know, these are very small groups, and the discourse is overwhelmingly dominated by conservative groups, right? So we don't have like this strong, this moderating force in the middle, like NU and Muhammadiyah. I think that really helps, because in Indonesia, you don't have one group that can claim dominance, over other groups, so there's no orthodoxy that we see in Malaysia, so there's like this kind of open marketplace of ideas of interpretations of Islam, so you have Muhammadiyah and NU in the middle, and then you have like Jaringan Islam Liberal and all these things, on one spectrum, and then you have the conservative, on the other spectrum, all competing, So I think that's why it's much more open. I think that's a major difference. But I don't know how we can have something like NU Muhammadiyah in Malaysia, because that's it takes a long historical process for that group with deep roots in society, because Muhammadiyah and NU have universities, they have their network of tens of thousands of pesantren, of schools and hospitals and all kind of social welfare program services. And so I mean they're completely they're an organic part of the Indonesian society. You cannot simply tell them that they're cafe or label them as cafe, so unlike what we see in Malaysia, if people disagree with the orthodoxy. So I think that's the major difference.
All right. So thank you very much to our speakers. So we have discussed a lot of things regarding freedom of religion, belief and expression, especially on the approaches to make recommendations or best practices to improve this in our country. So there's a discussion about top-down approach, top-bottom approach, bottom-up approach. I think it depends on the strategies of civil society and SUHAKAM or individuals to do this. And also, we discussed also a lot about the importance of education to promote inclusivity, humanity, so on and so forth. So, but to close this discussion on a positive note, please, again, Dr. Madeline and Dr. Azmil, one few seconds, just give us a positive note to end this discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I only want to use one Iban word. Segulai sejalai, sejalan sepenemu. Meaning to say, we must be united in our path towards reaching a better Malaysia. Segulai sejalai.
Terima kasih, Dr. Azmil.
I also like to add it with one word, but not Iban word. Empathy. So that's it. Empathy. I think that's what we're seriously lacking in Malaysia. I think that's what we seriously need to develop and foster and promote. I think the programs, like Kebersamaan campaign is a step in that direction. So I think what we need seriously right now is empathy, because we see a lot of ignorance that's driving at the heart of this polarization that we see in Malaysia now. So empathy. So that's it.
Yeah. Thank you very much to our speakers, to our very engaging participants. Of course, thank you for spending your time with us, and very bad that we couldn't spend more time, to answer all the questions. Of course, this is like never ending and should be a sustainable effort that we should, organize more forum, in future to discuss about this issue and to do something about it. So I think that's all. Thank you for your patience. We apologize for the technical glitches in the beginning, but we had a lovely and fruitful discussion. We hope that everyone is not stressed out by the pessimism, but also the most important thing, believe and also do something and then help each other, perhaps, in solidarity with other people who are doing good things. I think on behalf of KMU, we really appreciate your support. I'll pass the mic to RS to conclude.
Thank you very much, Isaac. And also thank you very much to our guest speakers and fellow participants for that engaging discussion. And now we have come to an end for our event. But before we let you go, I would like to remind you that now you can access our multilingual Kebersamaan booklet and today's discussion on our Facebook and website. So please see the links on the Zoom chat box and Facebook Live. So, as the saying goes, to every beginning, there is an ending. So on behalf of Community Muslim Universal, we would like to thank each and every one of you for gracing this event with your presence, active engagement, and relentless support. And again, we truly apologize for the leaking on our ends. Until we meet again soon, stay healthy and safe. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and goodbye.
Thank you.